A lease transfer is a process in which a new tenant takes over a departing tenant's current lease with the landlord's consent. This is different from a sublease, where the original tenant is still held responsible for anything that the new tenant does or doesn't take care of. On the contrary, the former tenant is no longer responsible for anything related to his former apartment in a lease transfer. 1. Read your lease. By law, you are bound to the terms and conditions incorporated in the lease, including how and if you can break it before the lease term expires. So before you transfer your lease, read the lease to see under what circumstances you can leave without penalty. Do you have to pay any upfront costs to get out of your lease early? Will you lose your security deposit? The best-case scenario is if the lease agreement states that the tenant has to pay the rent until the landlord finds a new tenant. In this case, the tenant is no longer responsible for anything related to the apartment after they vacate the property. There can also be a scenario where your landlord asks you to pay an amount up front to break the lease without having to worry about transferring the lease to someone else. 2. Discuss the matter with the landlord. Once you review the lease and become familiar with the terms related to the lease transfer apartment, it's time to talk with your landlord. Discuss the clause in the lease and see if there's an easy way to get out of the agreement. Your relationship with your landlord will be key here. If you have a strong credit history with your landlord, chances are he or she will cooperate with you. 3. Make an offer. Finding a tenant is exhausting. That's why landlords don't like the idea of the tenant leaving midway through the lease term. Landlords have to rerun the whole screening process. It would be equally challenging for you to find a replacement on such short notice. You may offer to pay a portion of the rent for the duration of the lease term. 4. Get everything in writing. Once your landlord is ready and you have found someone to transfer the lease to, sign a new agreement. The current tenant, the new tenant, and the landlord will sign the agreement. It would be even better to get the agreement notarized. 5. Perform a background check. Even though you're probably anxious to transfer the leased apartment, it's always good to screen the potential tenant before formally transferring the lease to him or her. Can you transfer rental lease to a new owner? No, you cannot transfer a rental lease to a new owner. The lease agreement is a legally binding contract between the tenant and the landlord, and it cannot be transferred to a new owner without the consent of both parties.